Our relationship and the love that we have are far stronger than any discussion that she and I may actually have.
So the cause of death is very clear, as I've just mentioned. Head injury. We also have neck compression. And we also have other injuries spread all over the body that are pointing towards assault. The pattern of the injuries, especially on the head, the bleeds, the hematoma that are found on the head. Hitting against a blunt substance, a wall, would have a particular pattern, a frontal bleed. But the bleeds that we found on the scalp, on the skin of the head, was partially spread on all aspects, including the face, the sides of the head, and also the back of the head. When we tie up together with other injuries that are well spread in the body, including the upper limbs and the trunk, then this is unlikely to be self-inflicted injury.
That right there, by the pathologist who conducted the autopsy on Albert Ojwang, the last statement, this is unlikely to be self-inflicted injury. Yet, Sam, when this was first revealed, the absurdities, the contradictions, the different stories, the blame game, it is, no, it wasn't me, it was this one. No, I was there. I mean, and everybody has a right to their own defense, and we shall see that as the case, you know, proceeds in earnest in the next few weeks. But then, you know, what were the things we were subjected to? That a man took his own life by repeatedly banging his head against a concrete wall? I mean, you know, at some point, even to not insult our intelligence, perhaps try to give a lie that might be believable. I mean, even medically, if you speak to doctors, they tell you, if you want to take your own life, it wouldn't happen in this way. But then there was just so much that was happening. I think in the first 5 days after, you know, this was revealed, it was an avalanche of different statements, different defenses, different positions, apologies even.
That was an extremely sad situation for a country to be in. And I mean, so you wonder, how can a young man be arrested in Homa Bay, taken through the entire journey, which is not short, JB will tell you that, all the way to Nairobi, locked in only for him to self-harm while in custody? It didn't make any sense. And for such kind of, is it testimony, is it information, is it confession, or whatever it is, to come from the Inspector General, who perhaps was basing it on sources of information from his juniors, it is rather unfortunate that we're in a situation where the Inspector General of Police can actually be lied to, believe the lie, and communicate to the people in a manner that he wants the people to believe. And in that press conference, you have both of his deputies, the entire leadership of the police service, Deputy Masengeli and Deputy Eliud Lagat, who has now have had to step aside. So a lot of questions linger on that particular matter. What exactly transpired? Was the IG and the two DIGs part of the cover-up or the attempt to cover up? Or are they just misled? And if they can be misled, what more can happen? Because, of course, when you listen to the DCI, the Director of Criminal Investigations, Amin Mohammed, saying that Samson Talam is the primary suspect in this particular matter, and he accuses him of lying, of course, a matter that is actively under investigation. So then you have a question of how then does the police service work? You have information that has been fed to the people, and Kenyans are supposed to believe that. The family of Ojwang was supposed to believe that. And if there was any matter to be taken to court, the police are going to give that evidence that he actually killed himself. Now, there are many cases that are taken to court by the prosecution, the Director of Prosecution, the Director of Public Prosecution, based on investigations conducted by the police. Some of these matters, police officers are witnesses. So now you start to wonder just how many people are in court facing charges erroneously. How many people are in prison for the wrong thing, that they are paying for sins they didn't commit. To an extent that you recall, when that time he was the Director General of, or not Director General, he was the DPP. Now he's the Director General NIS, Nuruddin Haji. Shortly after President William Ruto was elected, Nuruddin Haji came out and said that you're having to relook at the cases that you have taken to court emanating from investigations by the DCI, and saying that indeed we have determined there was inconsistencies in the investigations to an extent that the then Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, was set free because the investigating officer came and recanted his testimony, said that he was under pressure. So if that can happen at that level, and if you can lie to the Inspector General who goes ahead to relay the lie to the people, what more have we not seen? An extremely unfortunate moment, and I hope and believe that it's a reflection moment for the entire police service, because there are so many of them now, serious budget that they have, meaning they have access to all manner of information and investigation that they can conduct. They have enough resources, perhaps not enough, but they have a significant amount of resources to do their work. If the outcome is still a lie, it would be extremely an unfortunate situation, but hopefully we'll get closer to the truth.
Yeah, and, you know, I just wanted to, you know, what you were saying about what information he was given, to what extent did he himself interrogate that information? Okay, before you come to the members of the public and say this is what happened, you know, show me the cell, let me see. Which wall is this that he supposedly, you know, chose as the weapon of choice to end his life? You know, you would imagine that at that level, you get all the information, you cross your eyes, that the Inspector General would do his own form of investigations, at least, question all of that rhetoric before coming on, so that he doesn't then get himself in a position where he has to apologize for an untruthful report. I don't want to use the other word, but let's listen to him.
True, he did not hit his head against the wall, but that is the report that we had from the word go. I tell my apology on behalf of the National Police Service because of that information.
But you notice with all of the events that took place, you know, as this information was coming to light, was that it was taking public pressure for a correction like that to be made. It took public pressure then for this next one, confirming the genesis of this whole saga, of why Albert Ojwang was arrested in the first place, what was the nature of the complaint, and who was the complainant. All of these revelations were being made, apologies, retractions, and that sort of thing, being made after members of the public, civil society, lawyers, then put pressure on them for them to give us the information, including the confirmation of the person who made the complaint.
That had been launched by the DIG KPS about his name being tarnished. So it is on that basis that investigations were actually being carried out, because he also have got a right to be protected by the same law.
And then again, after this confirmation, more pressure from members of the public, members of civil society, the LSK on why has he not been summoned? Has he recorded a statement? You know, in what capacity does he continue to stand there right behind the Inspector General of Police every time he's giving clarifications and statements to members of the public? Again, after public pressure, now we hear from IPOA Chair on just the status of investigations, particularly around the Deputy Inspector General of Police.
On basis, IPOA has now issued summons to the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Mr. Eliud Lagat, to appear before the authority's investigations team to record a statement. The authority appeals for calm and assures Kenyans that in the quest for justice in this matter, there will be no sacred cows. Anyone found culpable will be prosecuted.
I mean, so this is how things work. Pressure, response. Pressure, who are these individuals? Like, it goes on and on.
It's saddening, and then first of all, condolences to the family of Albert Ojwang.
Yeah.
And Yvonne, what happened to Albert and the subsequent pressure by the public so that we are able to know the sequences of events that led to his death? Many families across this country have been in similar situations. Right in my backyard, in my hometown, on January 8th of 2022, a young man that I knew personally called Vitalis Okinda walked into the Bondo police station to try and retrieve his motorbike that had been taken by the police there, under the disguise that he was riding a motorbike without license. He never walked out. After 3 days, his family was called that he had committed suicide in the police cell. And when a postmortem was done, it revealed he had been tortured to his death. And to date, the family of Vitalis is yet to know who tortured their son to death and why. The police then had asked his father to give them 40,000 shillings as bribe, which he said, I do not have. So they said they'd present the son to court the next day. So on the material day they were supposed to go to court, they instead went to Bondo Hospital mortuary. And that case went radio silent. Even the appeals to IPOA to try and get some support, some relevant investigations to be done, never took off. And today, if you ask families to stand with placards with names of their loved ones that have died in the hands of police, not anywhere else but in police cells, it would be as long as this country probably has existed. And like I said initially, this is a police culture because they've learned to get away with it. They thought they'd easily get away with this of Albert Ojwang, not realizing that in the current state of events, Kenyans are woke and Kenyans will always demand for accountability. And therefore, that the police are being put under pressure to reveal tells you a lot. That this is something that happens, gets to the upper officers of the police service, and they do nothing. It is public pressure that is helping us get to know all these things. It is not that the police is efficient. It is not that they're accountable.
Yeah.
They are doing this because there's public pressure and signs that if you do not tell us more, we will pour into the streets and demand for your blood is there. That is why they are speaking. So it's a bad culture within the police service.
The story of Albert Ojwang, of Vitalis Okinda, like you said, are the stories of many others in this country. It's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I think perhaps for what it's worth, even though a police cell isn't the most pleasant place to be, but one would imagine it's the most secure.
Exactly.
That at least when you are in there,
you're assured of the next day.
Exactly. But yet, Linus, it's not the same.
No, it's not. And I just want us to listen to the father of the late Albert Ojwang, who spoke about that theory that his son had committed suicide in the police cell.
Niliambiwa ya kwamba mtoto wangu amejigonga kwenye ukuta. Nauliza swali, huku kwenye makwapa pia unaweza kufika kwenye ukuta huko juu kwa kugongwa? huku kwenye kishogo na kwa magoti. Haya anaweza kufika huko kwenye ukuta huko juu kunakoonekana damu. Habari hizi zinamwendea tunayempenda rais wetu wa nchi hii. Tafadhali mzee wa nchi, tusaidie, nisaidie kama mwananchi anayetoa ushuru pia, na angalia haki kuwatendea wanyonge. Sababu boma langu hata ilipigwa picha hata kabla kijana wangu kuondoka. Wakaona kwamba huyu ni mfukara, hawezi kujitetea. Kwa hivyo lolote tunaweza kumfanyia mtoto wake ili kwamba iwe suluhu namna hiyo. Hiyo haibariki. Hiyo ni laana. Hiyo ni laana. Hiyo ni laana.
First, the tremendous strength of this man is admirable. That he still could manage to string so much reason and logic, even in the circumstances he was finding himself in. This is his only son, and he was gone. The story of him carrying his title deed to follow his son to Nairobi, because he was already preparing for the possibility of a court process that will see him maybe deposit the title as security for his son to be free. This is a heart-rending story at a human level. And there's something he says there about the poor. And he says they looked at my home and they said, I don't matter. And indeed, that is sometimes, most of the time, the attitude of even the police. Utadu. Because their attitude actually is determined by the status of the person they are interacting with. So when they find a simple home, like we saw the home of the late Albert Ojwang, then this Mzee is accurate in describing the attitude. And I think it speaks for millions of Kenyans on something that needs to change about the attitude of those in power, the office bearers, the instruments of power like the police service, that they need to interact in a more dignified way with the people that they have to deal with. So he said that they don't matter, and that's really, really sad. Of course, the Mzee later spoke to the president, and I just wanted to listen to how that went.
Rais, kwa kuchukua kijana wangu Albert Omondi kama kijana wake na kuhisi kuona kitu, sababu wengi wameaga dunia jana, hata juzi, hata wiki jana, lakini alichagua kuchukua mzigo huo kama wake ili akaweze kusema pole kupitia kwa simu yangu. Mimi namshukuru kwa ajili ya hiyo.
Again, the strength of this man. He's still trying to be normal. But you try to put yourself in the shoes of this man, he is completely broken. Of his son going to the DCI, being collected from home, I just want us to listen to what he had said as he demanded for answers from the police service.
Wa polisi, Bwana Eliud Lagat, wewe ndiwe uliyetumana watu wako ma-DCI waje nyumbani, waje wachukue mwanangu. Nilipeana kijana wangu kwa heshima hiyo mkononi mwako, maana nilipata habari kupitia kwa watu uliowatuma waje wamchukue yeye. Baada ya kukabidhi huyu mtoto kwako, maana hawa ni watu uliowatuma tu, leo hii matokeo inatokea kwamba mtoto wangu amekufa kwa majeraha ya kupigwa. Nahitaji unieleze kwa nini ulimuua mtoto wangu. Kupitia kwa sheria ukaseme kwa nini ulimuua mtoto wangu.
Again, that presence of mind. Mzee Ojwang is talking about due process.
Yeah.
Due process. I handed over my son to you, and to you, the police service.
Yeah.
And why did you kill him? Yeah.
It's that he is so dignified, even in all his pain. You cannot even begin to fathom the pain he, his wife, and Albert Ojwang's widow and young son are going through. But in all of that, he never utters ill word, ill feelings. With all of that, for me, it's even the way we have been reduced to, like you said, Linus, that you look at the situation, but that he has to justify that I pay taxes. Whether he pays taxes or not, whether you pay taxes or not, the government has a right to protect all citizens of this country. But you see, this is what we're reduced to saying, that, okay, hey, I pay taxes. I'm a law-abiding citizen. This is what I do, so please spare me. This is the interaction between police, between government, and its citizens.
And I think in a way, if Mzee Ojwang finally managed to crack the very hard heart of Kenya, especially at the official level. This country sometimes comes across as heartless. We went through 61 deaths last year of the Gen Z, shot, abducted, some turn up dead in some dams. Very, very heart-rending stories. But from the political side of things and governance, we argued about almost trying to justify what happened. But here is one incident that finally pricked the conscience of this country. When the president calls, it's because I think as a human being he's touched beyond the usual resistance that we see in official circles of trying to man it up and let people carry their own burden. I think Ojwang has pricked the conscience of the country, not just with how he told his own story, but with how he paints the picture of what could have been done very repeatedly. And this is what should really trouble us. How many times have police done this? I mean, how many Kenyans have died in those cells, or even died later, having gone through what Ojwang went through? And remember the story that is coming out from a super witness statement by Mukwana, who was a participant in the beatings, is that they actually brought in remandees to do this job. How many times have we done this? I think this should just be the beginning of the many questions that especially the National Police Service should answer.
Yeah, and one of the questions, Sam, as we come to you is, and Linus, you're the legal mind around this table, if it was that he posted something that was offensive to the Deputy Inspector General, as a person, as a human being, as a holder of the office, that would rank as a civil matter, no? I feel you have defamed me and you've said something.
Yes, yes.
In which case, what's the arrest for?
There shouldn't be an arrest.
It would be that the person who feels offended goes to court and sues and says, hey, you have said something about me that is untrue, that defames me, that, maligns my character. And then that matter is heard in that way. So it's by no means a criminal issue from what we are seeing and is revealed. And this is the same thing that the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Faith Odhiambo, had to say about it.
Free would have been with his family, would have been released because they would have not been able to hold charges. But they decided to take the law upon their hands they decided to take his life. We are saying that we will not allow that this matter be swept. He was killed while in police custody. They have tried to take us through a bull and cock story, telling us how he hit his head and killed himself. We want every single officer held responsible, from the one who issued orders, to the ones who picked him up, to the ones that he was handed off to. The father narrated how he handed over his son, believing that he must have committed any offense and therefore will be brought properly before court. But he ended up handing over his son to killers.
Whichever way you slice this is such a difficult story.
It doesn't make any sense at any given instance that Ojwang should die for what is alleged to have written on his social media platform, whatever it is. And you realize even how difficult it has been to even find what exactly did he post about the DIG who has now stepped aside. To an extent that even when you look at the law, it's cybercrime. What is the name of that law? I'll get it.
Computer.
Yes.
Computer Misuse
Kenya's
and Cybercrimes
Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act of 2018. There appears to be deliberate misuse of this particular law in so many occasions. If you have to recall even what has been happening over time, whenever there is protest or people expressing themselves against what has been happening by the political class. Now, what we hadn't experienced is that outside the political class, you can also offend civil servants, public servants, to an extent that what has happened to Ojwang would happen. And I'm just wondering, because the police service works in, there are orders that are given, and there's a chain of command. So how exactly did, I would imagine, an OB, because the DIG, to complain, you need to file an OB. How did an entry in the OB, I suppose it was Central Police Station, though we have not been told, how did that entry translate to or what you've seen to the extent of death? Because also, the Inspector General of Police cannot just give an order to a junior officer. He gives orders to the police services, in this case, whether it's the Kenya Police, through the DIG. I would imagine the same case applies. The DIG cannot just call the OCS of which police station can he refer to? Let's assume a police station in Mandera. The DIG cannot just give an order there. It has to follow a certain chain of command. So do you have an account of how the occurrence book entry translated to all this action to an extent that we are where we are at this moment? And then listen to Ojwang's father. He's just using logic. And logic is available to everyone that wants to use it. Did the police officers at Central Police Station use logic? Because yes, there's a complaint here of an officer who, as the IG correctly says, has a right to be protected by the law. Did they use logic of what they are doing? Because by the moment that he is making an entry in the OB, if it was made, it means then this is an officer who is ready to follow the due process of law. But outside of that, what are the instructions were coming? At the same time, it reminds me of a case that in 2013, there's a gentleman by the name Martin Koome, who was killed by a policeman who was the OCS Ruaraka police station, Nahashon Mutua. So this is a gentleman who had a domestic squabble with a wife. He was taken to the police station, Ruaraka police station. And on that night, he was assaulted by Nahashon Mutua. And then he died the following day. Nahashon Mutua blamed Kelvin Odhiambo, who was another detainee held at the same station. And he was processed in court up until there was an intervention by the IJM, which came in and looked at what was happening. They went ahead to represent or help one Martin Koome, but at the same time Kelvin Odhiambo, to an extent that eventually in 2018, the court found this gentleman, Nahashon Mutua, to be guilty and sentenced to death, a sentence that was also upheld by the Court of Appeal. So as one of the early cases of what the police are guilty of, what they have done, I would wonder, because for you to be an Inspector General, you need a couple of years in the police service. I think it's about 20 years. When 2013 was happening and Martin Koome was killed, IG Kanja for sure was a police officer. DIG was a police officer. Perhaps the OCS, Samson Talam, was a police officer. Did it occur to them that something has happened to one of their colleagues in 2018, which is just about 7 years ago? And what does that mean? There's a Swahili saying, Jamila is not here, ukiona cha mwenzio chanyolewa, chako tia maji. Well, I hope it means what I'm trying to, to say, that if something happens to your colleague, you should also be mindful of what you're doing, because the circumstances are very similar. This is a man who had just a squabble with a wife, a domestic squabble. They were being brought to the station. Perhaps the wife was reporting him, but she was not bringing him to be killed. So really, what we're witnessing is extremely unfortunate, and hopes that we'll get to the bottom of it. And I'm just wondering, eventually when the investigations are complete, and of course the DIG has said that he'll step away up until the conclusion of these matters, will there be a claim of abuse of office? Because if you make a complaint and then the process is expedited, because how many complaints have people made, including my phone was stolen in town. You make a report and you're told that you need to follow up with the DCI or whatever it is. We're also speaking to the MNOs, mobile network operators, to help us trace that phone. You stay for weeks, months before that can be done. But you look at this process, the report being made and the arrest and eventually the murder, there's a serious, the process was expedited. So I fear that eventually, if the work is done thoroughly, it will reach, and there will be a question of abuse of office on the DIG. Again, the other unfortunate incident which we cannot miss is when all this was happening, we see IPOA chairperson, Isaka San, in the company of the Inspector General and sort of...
flanked by them.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're working together.
So one wonders, this is the authority that is supposed to be investigating the activities of the police, but then now they are appearing together, even if Isaka San does not actively investigate. That should not happen. You know,
IPOA, the first letter stands for?
Independent.
Independent.
And that must not just be done, but it must be seen to be done. So certain optics, where they're addressing the media together, and he makes a statement and is flanked by the very police highest up in rank and file that, you know, they're going to investigate, including the very man who was the complainant.
Was there?
He should have been there.
Standing there.
He should have stepped aside from that press conference.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Actually, did they need to have that press conference together? IPOA is not capable of holding its own press conference at a different venue, at a different time, to say this is what we're going to do, bearing in mind the various complaints we have had from even previous cases, including of people who are abducted and during the Gen Z protests. We've had commissioners of IPOA themselves saying that they don't have the right cooperation from the police. Now, cooperation doesn't necessarily mean that you guys are seen to be working together. It just means that people respect the different independent constitutional offices. So some things are just important. You know, justice not just being done, but being seen to be done in various ways. Jay?
I just wanted to mention something in line with what Linus had indicated, that maybe this Albert Ojwang situation would be the police moment. This evening, I'm made to understand that senior police officers from the entire Nyanza region visited Mr. Ojwang. Ostensibly, they're saying they did it on behalf of the entire National Police Service. They were led by the Nyanza region commander, a gentleman called Gisiri Nyamohanga, and visited them with foodstuffs and all that to help them cope at this particular time. I hope they're not doing it for show. I hope they genuinely mean it, and that this sad situation where we've ended up in, this would be the last we will see in our police stations.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but Ojwang's family didn't need this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have to.
At what point would it be interpreted to be, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Intimidation of sorts.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm not about to question their motives.
The motive, but
the service has been implicated in his death.
This, yeah.
Leave him alone.
Exactly.
Don't go there, because if we start to impugn any ill motive that, okay, ndio mkate, ndio
maji, soda.
And what else is said when this is done? I mean, just, again, just
because
being seen to be done, stay away.
Exactly.
Leave it. I don't know. Again, logic, but...
Yeah. But maybe we can leave room for, how do I call this? Because, like I said earlier, I think this incident has genuinely jolted the country.
Yeah.
There have been many incidents where we've not seen any empathy. And I really want to believe that the act of going to his home is still part of maybe expressing official empathy.
Okay.
And empathy has been lacking. So maybe this is a good first attempt, because this is such an unfortunate incident that I want to believe even good policemen out there would wish it never happened.
Too.
Or good people in government also wish it should not have gone in this direction. It's so heartrending that this country actually feels like a sinful place, because people should not die that way. Taken away from their family, they were having lunch, and then hours later they lie dead. I don't see a problem with them actually visiting the home and saying sorry. They need to do that, I think, many times, and genuinely, not for optics. I see the press conference as well in similar fashion. Benefit of the doubt. Could it be in the moment the country had gotten into because of this death, shocking killing of Ojwang? You know, IPOA and the police chiefs happened to be to share the same stairs. Benefit of the doubt again, that, you know, what was the moment? We need to do something to make the country calm, don't make the situation worse. But again, to go with that is the fact that IPOA has actually made quite some quick progress on this issue. Gotten the statement from Mukwana and ending up to in prosecution. We got the remandees. They're all arrested, all part of the successful probe by IPOA. So I think maybe it's too early to judge some of the institutions, including IPOA, at this stage, as we see how it goes. What I think will happen is we are going to have a very, very interesting trial of the suspects that have been arrested. I see in the media, we've all said Mukwana spilled the beans. And yes, you look at his statement to IPOA, the whole thing unraveled in one stop. So all those theories about where the late Albert was taken were again reduced to maybe speculation by the statement by Mukwana. I think coming shortly is a very, very interesting murder trial.
Yeah, but let's hope that this is as swiftly as we've seen the investigations, that we see also, a swift trial that comes to its logical conclusion. Whichever way you look at this, like we've